Africa is becoming more populous and richer. It has experienced unprecedented and uninterrupted economic growth for the past 3 decades. But if African countries are to become economically successful, their governments will have to implement adequate policies which contribute to the expansion of the private sector, job creation, and an increase in the productivity levels. Corruption must be dealt with in Africa. Unemployment, mainly among the youth, is another challenge facing African leaders. These and many more issues that hinders our growth will be discussed on the banner and provide the why, how, and what to accelerate the continent's dream of economic freedom. Watch on the banner every Saturday. It's going to be hot, heated, but focused. Africa's future success will depend on stability, sound policies, and solid institutions. Don't miss this. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the On the Banner. On the Banner is proudly sponsored by Gold Coast Securities. Gold Coast Fund Management is a reputable fund management that has won 2 awards as the best financial advisory company 2011-2012. It is the only investment bank that has branches all over Ghana. You should invest with Gold Coast Fund Management for a good return. Call them on 050-129-4893. Again, 050-129-4893. First National Savings and Loans, the People's Bank. First National Savings and Loans Bank has branches across the country. Coconut Grove Hotel is also supporting this program. You can always have the opportunity to send your messages or comments via our WhatsApp number 050-6290-721. I'll pick it up again. 050-6290-721. My name is Ekshalom Yagono, and always on Saturdays between the hours of 3 and 5, On the Banner is right within your homes, where you play a serious role by commenting, suggesting, but through our WhatsApp number. You're welcome once again on board, and do well to remind a friend out there that this is a specific platform to show up the economy of Ghana. With me for this afternoon's program is Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng. He served as the spokesperson on finance, am I right, sir? During the Kweku administration, and is now an MP. Honorable, you're welcome. I tried to send a congratulatory message, but unfortunately I lost my phones.
But I felt it anyway.
Wherever you were.
You wanted to
yes,
congratulate.
we had some interaction and all that previously. But it's been very vibrant of late, and I'm happy for that. Showing the amount of experience he gathered while in office, trying to at least put government on its toes, giving suggestions here and there with some positive criticism. That depends on your opinion out there anyway. The recent of it all is about his opinion on the economy and specifically lately the energy crisis. He's made a few comments, and this afternoon I want to find out his views about what he makes of the economy as somebody in finance, and also on the finance committee of the Parliament of Ghana, right? Am I right?
You're right.
I hope I did well with the introduction.
Oh, you did.
Designation
Fantastic.
accomplished. There's something I must add.
Everything
Are you a
is
chief
fine.
of Bush? You're paying me something that I need to also put in there. This is a
Being the
platform.
MP is sufficient.
Oh,
It's
beautiful,
sufficient.
beautiful. How comfortable will you be when I call you Kweku?
You can, especially when you are in my house, you can call me.
Ghanaians don't seem to. We're trying to encourage people listening and enjoying talk. Sometimes it becomes so technical. So for us at BTA, we'll try to simplify issues as much as possible, reduce the technical language so that anybody, a first timer, will just enjoy and go along with the program with all the hearty discussions that we have. Once again, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So good to see you. You've been very passionate about some issues about the economy. I wouldn't want to put words in your mouth by going through a kind of Q&A. As a parliamentarian and typically a Ghanaian, what do you make of the economy, briefly, current economy?
I think in summary, and it is out there for all who are observing, that Ghana's economy is experiencing difficulties that we have never known in the past. Of course, it's been a developing economy, so you would expect some difficulties. But if you look at several areas of the economy and national finances, you easily see that we are experiencing new difficulties, and I would mention a few. For the first time in the history of our economy, statutory transfers have not just delayed, they are just not there to be paid. For instance, the law says when you collect the National Health Insurance Levy, within a month, and I think it's the same for the GET fund, you must put the money in the various funds. That is to say, if you collect the National Health Insurance Levy, for instance, you should put the money in the National Health Insurance Fund. Now, what is happening is that government has collected the money, the levies, all right, but somehow government cannot account for the money. To put it in another way, government is unable to put it in the designated funds, because it has used the money for something else. Now, the District Assembly Common Fund, for instance, is a statutory transfer. When government has collected our revenue, the law says 7.5% of that should go into the District Assembly Common Fund. We are in the middle of 2014. Government has not been able to transfer the monies, 7.5% of the monies it collected.
Are you suggesting that monies have been misused, or is it a matter of priority? Perhaps there are more begging areas, and therefore, like any business person would do, or any responsible parent would do, where the call is most urgent, sometimes you must pay heed, and therefore monies have been utilized in such sectors, not merely letting it look so political that monies have been collected and perhaps have not been paid.
You see, those who made the laws knew that government has other responsibilities. So you collect money, they say retain 92.5% for all the things you're talking about. Send 7.5% into the District Assembly Common Fund. Government is unable to do that until recently, when we had the third quarter of 2013 District Assembly Common Fund released. We were in arrears for almost a year. Now, if you use 92.5% for your purposes as central government, and you dip your hands into the 7.5% for local government, because you claim that at the center things are harder for you, then you know the economy is running into difficulties. I do not mention these things to suggest that somebody has misused the money. I mean, the misuse of public funds is a subject we can have. I think, obviously, there are areas where clearly public funds have been misused. But on this specific point, I am trying to indicate some of the difficulties our economy is going through. Even if we grant it to government that the money has not been misappropriated and that it has been used for the public cause, we will still have to ask the question, are we not supposed to prioritize so that central government would have its due and then local government can also have its due? Is it good governance when we are trying to advance decentralization for government to take the money and say, I have used it for something else? What about the things that have to be done at the local level? So that reflects on the difficulties we're going through. Last month, I was in the constituency and I visited a particular primary school, and they said, Honorable, for the whole 2013-2014 academic year, transfers we should have received for the purposes of running the school, buying the chalk, buying the basic things have not come. As a result, we are having difficulty getting chalk to teach.
Yeah, that is true.
So we are pleading with you, if you can support us from your common fund, we will be grateful. And I said to them, I would have loved to support you, but my common fund has also not come. because the common fund is part of the local government transfers.
Okay.
And that is supposed to be used under the supervision of the NPs. In arrears for about a year now.
Mm-hmm.
So I told them it is the reason I'm unable to help. You see, I'm pointing out these things so we bring home the point that our economy is going through unprecedented challenges.
Is it a fault of the current government, or perhaps it is something that we overlooked as a nation over the years? Because a casual look will tell you that things have not been better under any government. And government after government, cost of living has been what? Growing higher and higher since independence. So will you blame it at the doorstep of a particular government?
I'm not interested in doing that.
Okay.
I'm not interested in blaming anybody.
Okay.
What I'm interested in doing is telling the people in charge of our nation right now that these difficulties exist. We must recognize them, admit them, find out why we're here, and assess government strategies for taking us out of here. That's what's of interest to me. Now, I have mentioned the transfers to reflect on the difficulties we're having.
Obviously.
But you can also even look at public borrowing.
All right.
We seem to be borrowing more now, more than ever. And
but
again,
mathematically, not to cut you in there, that should be the case, because if monies that should be allocated are not being allocated, or statutory payments are not being done, obviously, like you did say, there's a gap, and therefore that gap needs to be filled. And if you don't have, you have to go out borrowing just to survive. Is it avoidable?
What you're saying suggests that the statutory transfers have been done, and government is saying that, look, I was able to do that because I borrowed. But we've just had a discussion that those statutory transfers have not been done.
And still we are borrowing.
So, to what use have we put the millions and billions of not just cedis, but dollars that we have borrowed? Now, again, I have heard responses from people who speak for government that we borrow to put into development projects.
Yeah.
That may well be, I grant that to them. It's for the people of Ghana to look around and to see whether
infrastructure
they are seeing sufficient investments in energy, and therefore they are getting reliable energy supply, whether they are getting sufficient investments in roads. It's for Ghanaians to judge. But the point I am making is that when you borrow to the point that interest payment as government expenditure is now the second biggest expenditure in the records of government, that is serious. That money that should have gone into the provision of social services are now being used to pay interest on loans we have borrowed. It would have been a more comfortable reality if we could, for instance, say, because we borrowed to fix our energy delivery difficulties, that is how come we're here. And that giving that energy can help our industries to produce more, we can export more, we get higher corporate taxes, we are in a position to pay back this. Now we have borrowed, our energy sector is in trouble, our industries have extreme difficulty, they are having to lay off workers.
Yes.
They are unable to produce as they should have. Therefore, corporate taxes are going down. Our balance of payment, that is to say how much, balance of trade, that is more basic for us. How much we export relative to what we import.
Yeah.
We are exporting less and less relative to what we import. As a result of which our CD is in trouble. That is increasing the production cost of industry. and worsening.
A kind of vicious cycle.
And exactly, and
nothing,
worsening.
Nothing seems to, click.
Exactly, and worsening the state of our companies. The result is that the cost of living goes up because our CD the value of our CD keeps going down.
Yeah.
When that happens, life becomes more difficult for ordinary people, with the consequence that poverty increases. Now, that is the effect of some of the technical things we are discussing. In the end, the outcome is with the deterioration in the lives of ordinary Ghanaians.
Are these things you've mentioned, and many more I know you could have touched on, because I've done a little bit into things that you have made mention of passionately. Are you suggesting that some of these are avoidable with the passion, the angle, or the trajectory of your argument?
Yes, that's the point I'm making.
Typically.
I'll come to that. Yeah. I definitely think that many of these things are avoidable. One, government should stop the over expenditures. I mean, in 2012, we had unprecedented deficit. We have never incurred so much deficit. And what is deficit? It is the difference between the extent of your expenditure and how much resources you're able to raise in a particular year.
All right.
It is like being a worker. You earn, say, 800 Ghana cedis a month. That is your inflow.
Yeah.
If month after month you're spending 1,000, say 500.
Excess.
Then there's an excess of
about
700 Ghana cedis.
Yes.
In terms of national accounting, we call that a deficit.
Yeah.
Now, when you keep doing this year after year, then as it would be if you were an individual, we would say your finances are in trouble. Yes, as a country, our finances are also in trouble in that regard. Now, how does that impact on some of the weaknesses I have indicated? You see, once you overspend, you must finance that over expenditure. You must look for the money to pay for the over expenditures you have made. If government is in a position to tax more, then they can use the taxes for current needs, but also to pay off the deficits of, say, yesterday. When government is not collecting enough taxes, then the Bank of Ghana has to come in and finance.
All right.
And how would the Bank of Ghana do that? The Bank of Ghana would do that by giving the government money, to put it in very basic terms. Now, that money is not coming from production. It's not as though we exported, we got some money, and that money is it's almost to say you have printed money. So you are diluting your own currency.
All right.
The effect is that your currency becomes lighter, and then you see your CD depreciating. So government over expenditure is one of the biggest burdens that this economy is carrying.
Is it a mistake? It could have been deliberate. Perhaps it's a one-off expenditure, and therefore a government thinks that let's do it. After all, in the end, we may come back and tidy things. Is it not mathematically right?
It is not a
from what is going on.
It is
you are in the finance. You are a member of the finance committee. I'm sure you have a critical and detailed look at some of the happenings in terms of the economy of Ghana. Are there no deliberate decisions? Were there mistakes, or perhaps attributed to ineptitude by somebody who should have done his work well? Because I don't think any responsible government would deliberately mishandle the economic affairs.
Lack of discipline. I don't know what you call you're consciously running a deficit. What I think happens.
It's about over expenditure.
It's about as
against estimated whatever expenditure. Yes, but then you go into overdrive or excess. Perhaps you did something impulsive, like we all do. So if it's something that was done impulsively, sometimes deliberately, because you think that in future you might need this. So what I'm trying to make, my point is that, is it not possible that government would have embarked on economic track that led to the deficit because it is a one-off expenditure, which perhaps in future might yield some dividends?
We're not in a position to do this perhaps, because the budget has been read. We know the expenditures that gave rise to these over expenditures.
Okay.
And it happened not just in 2012. In 2013, it was repeated. In 2012, there were pure over expenditures. And you think when we're having an election and we're distributing laptops around, we're distributing vehicles, and we go and donate vehicles.
My audience who said this shouldn't come from you, a politician, because that is characteristic of, I wouldn't want us to go into that direction, because that is very characteristic of a culture of the current politics we do in this country. I mean, we buy our votes from delegates, etc. So the expenditure is become natural for our politics. So I'm talking on behalf of my audience. I'm sure they'll say, oh, but you also do these things. You all give out money. So is it one thing that you can blame our economy on? I would have wanted us to look typical like something like energy. Has this mismanagement that you are seeking to address play a role or have affected our energy crisis?
You see, we run a deficit every election year.
Okay.
Sometimes we make gains in between the elections, some macroeconomic gains.
Okay.
And then in an election year, everything is thrown overboard again. Yeah. And it has been discussed over and over again. It is one of the difficult points of our economic management.
All right.
I think we should discuss that. If we pretend that, well, that's all politicians do.
That's our culture.
So let's leave it to happen. Then we may as well stop this interview, because we will not be solving the problems. I mean, we cannot leave what ought to be done and pretend that it's part of our culture and therefore it should happen. I know you didn't intend to put it that way, but what it really is that is hurting our economy.
That is it.
And when I speak like this, I am not necessarily speaking in respect of this administration or that administration. I am telling you that in 2012, it could have been any government.
Okay.
But the over expenditures of 2012 were unpardonable. They were unprecedented.
Okay.
Now, in 2013, government tried to curb expenditure a bit, but our inflows dropped so drastically that in the end, the gap between our expenditures and our inflows remained where they were previously. And I'm saying that when that happens, somebody has to finance the over expenditures.
Yes.
It leads to a deterioration in our currency.
Yes.
Government, and never mind that the Mama administration is in power. The Mama administration right now has to show the way.
Okay.
I am comfortable with anybody asking the same things of a future NPP government. I have no difficulty.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that where national finances are drifting, the difficulties into which we are drifting, if we don't get the government to have a change, and I say this advisedly, a change of heart,
okay,
and to put a serious lid on our expenditures, we'll continue to have the problems we are having. Now, you asked about energy.
Yeah.
Let's see how that flows into energy. You see, when the cedi deteriorates, what it means is that our crude oil imports, and net we import crude oil. Our crude oil imports are becoming more expensive. Then fuel prices have to go up. It drives up inflation. And then it comes with all its attendant difficulties for ordinary people.
Cost of production.
Cost of production goes up, and things really get hard.
Okay.
The only way it could have been beneficial is if our export sector was ready to take advantage of the fact that if I export, I get dollars or foreign exchange. And if I convert that in my country, I get a lot of cedis because the cedi's value is falling. There's a sense in which that could be an advantage for exporters. But when you are an exporter and you are having erratic power supply, you are not even able to take advantage of the deteriorating value of your own cedi or the appreciating value
products
of exactly
attractive.
So either way, we're losing.
Okay.
Now, how do we fix some of these problems? I've first indicated that government ought to look at its over expenditures.
Discipline in terms of.
And I have spoken with people in government who give me the impression that we have cut to the barest minimum.
All right.
I don't think so.
Still, things
I think
more can be done.
The SUBA payment,
Yeah.
the 74 million Ghana cedis that was paid to SUBA, I have looked at the details. I have no doubt in my mind that that was a bad expenditure. SUBA hadn't done anything to deserve that payment. And I consider it in the area of corruption that people made this payment because they benefit illegitimately from these wrong payments. Now, when people see all this, it is really hard to convince anybody that government has cut its expenditures to the barest minimum. There's too much waste. If you look at the Auditor General's report, you see several areas. Of course, these are not new discoveries.
Yeah.
But this is the time to fix it.
Well, this is the time to fix it.
And the government in power will have to fix it.
I'll look at your views on the energy sector and what we got to do to perhaps stabilize it. And I hope that you suggested that it become a secret awaiting that one day you take the reins.
I'm going to go to that.
Yes,
but
we'll look at
that later.
Still on the banner, we'll be right back. Africa is becoming more populous and richer. It has experienced unprecedented and uninterrupted economic growth for the past 3 decades. But if African countries are to become economically successful, their governments will have to implement adequate policies which contribute to the expansion of the private sector, job creation, and an increase in the productivity levels. Corruption must be dealt with in Africa. Unemployment, mainly among the youth, is another challenge facing African leaders. These and many more issues that hinders our growth will be discussed on the banner and provide the why, how, and what to accelerate the continent's dream of economic freedom. Watch on the banner every Saturday. It's going to be hot, heated, but focused. Africa's future success will depend on stability, sound policies, and solid institutions. Don't miss this. You're back on the banner. I've been a very hearty discussion with MP for Boise West Constituency, Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng. I believe that you're following the discussions and you're getting your suggestions, your questions, whatever it may be, to be part of the program. To get us on the WhatsApp is 05062907721. Again, 05062907721. You can send your messages coming. I will be ably supported by Gold Coast Fund Management. That's Gold Coast Securities. Gold Coast Fund Management is a reputable fund management that has won 2 awards as the best financial advisory company 2011-2012. First National Savings and Loans has also been in support of this program. The People's Bank, First National Savings and Loans Bank, has branches across the country, and Coconut Grove Hotel, where we do our live broadcast. You can still be part of the show. Keep the messages flowing. Sir, I'll be very much interested in what you make of it, because recently you've made some statements with regards to the energy sector. I don't know how the economic mismanagement affects energy. I don't know if there is any relationship there. Whether it is or not, what should we be doing? Because energy is so critical and fundamental to industry. Not only industry, our general lives. You know, keeping a home where I would be so much energized by electricity lately. What do you make of the energy crisis we find ourselves?
Yeah, if you consider that we are not putting as much investments as we should in the energy sector, if you consider that to be mismanagement, then of course, we are where we are because of mismanagement. Now, the energy sector is probably the most important sector of national life today, because not only does it power our industries and fuel our processes of production, they are actually social service that serves us in our domestic settings, that we use in the hospitals, and so Ghana's deteriorating energy supply is a real cause for concern. For me, the most critical, the entire sector needs investment, from generation to distribution. They all need investment.
Yeah.
But one of the most urgent challenges facing our energy sector is the low credit worthiness of ECG. You see, ECG is the pivot around which our energy sector revolves.
Okay.
I say that because when people produce power, and here I'm talking about electrical power.
All right.
When people produce power, somebody must off-take the power. Somebody must, if you like, buy the power and sell the power to consumers. That is the structure of our delivery system. Now, the person or the entity that is supposed to do that is the ECG. The ECG itself is cash-strapped. Government owes it a lot of money. Other people owe ECG a lot of money. ECG itself also owes a lot of people, with the result that investment into the transmission, the work that ECG does, the transmission and delivery of power to consumers, has been lacking investment. Okay. Those investments are not going. Okay. And therefore, ECG, because of these difficult financial situations, ECG cannot invest in these, as I have already indicated. All right. Now, when people want to come and produce, they ask, what will I do with the power? If you are inviting me to come and produce power in your country, when I produce the power, what happens to it?
Consumption?
We say, well, we would buy.
Yes.
What is the arrangement for buying? Oh, we have an ECG that would off-take the power you generate, deliver to consumers, collect the money from consumers, and pay you back the cost of your production. Okay. And then the investors go to look at the ECG. They say, oh, if it is this sick man, respectfully, if it is this sick man that is going to buy the power from me, then I have to be cautious how much money I invest in generation of power or the production of power. Yes. Because I am not too sure whether,
if I put in so much,
the
they'll
man,
be able to take care.
The ECG that is supposed to off-take the power and deliver to consumers is in a position to do that. Because of the low credit worthiness of ECG, they cannot attract investments.
Oh.
So I think that one of the most critical things we need to deal with in our energy sector is the conditions of ECG. And again, I want to see what government is doing in this regard. Government knows that ECG is in financial difficulties. It knows that ECG has low credit rating. And I want to see government interventions in this area. That what specifically is government doing in respect of ECG? But that is just one level of the issue. The other considerations are, we talk of crude oil being too expensive to power our generator sets. Yeah. So everybody now, and legitimately so, is talking about
alternative
gas. So we are generating gas. As I speak, the country is consuming power at a rate of 10% increase every year, minimum. Okay. So it is predictable that, say, in 2050, 2030, we would need so and so amount of power.
All right.
It is predictable. Now, what you want to see from the managers of our energy sector are those strategies that are being pursued to match supply of energy with this demand.
Okay.
I've heard many people talk about the associated gas at Jubilee, that we're going to get something from there. And when we get it, we'll get our own oil. The truth of the matter is that Jubilee is going to give us 80 million standard cubic feet per day. That cannot even power the generator set in Takoradi. So I do not think
referring to Abuaze?
Yes. You cannot power the Abuaze sets.
What we will get in terms of gas?
Yes, from Jubilee. Cannot even power the Abuaze plant alone. It can't. Let me move on. Now, we talk about the Sankofa and the 10 projects. These are projects that are not going to see light till 2018 at the earliest, because some of the contracts have even still not been activated. So I worry that the fuel, the supply of fuel in the medium term is not clear.
All right.
Arrangements to get that done are not clear.
Okay.
And again, I want to see from government a clear strategy that would persuade me that yes, at a rate of 12% increase in consumption or demand per year, I can also supply this, and these are the interventions, and we must have it in terms of availability of fuel, gas, it appears right now. In terms of those who are going to build the generator sets, so that they will use the gas to power the sets and to generate energy. And then, of course, as I have perhaps said and oversaid, how government is dealing with the transmission issues, which is directly dealing with the ECG. Until I'm able to get clear explanation from government on going forward, how these matters should be resolved, I am considerably pessimistic that we're going to be in this difficult and erratic power supply for quite some time.
But then there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. Mr. Boa, the Minister of Energy, is alleged to have said, just yesterday, I got wind of that in the third quarter, perhaps, there will be some relief, counting on the Atuabo gas processing plant, that will have some relief. Are you optimistic?
I would want to be, but I don't forget that the president himself has since I think September 2012 been promising us month after month that the power difficulties would go away in November. It didn't. We're given a new date, February. It didn't. April. Look, we have had many of these promises. I am looking at broadly the strategies for dealing with the more serious policy issues of our energy sector. And I am getting the sense that we are not clear what we're doing. Government strategies are inadequate and in fact unclear. And if we didn't do that, as for the promises, they're easy to give. We would be here next year still lamenting about erratic power supply, because don't forget, when this power crisis, the current one, started, we were told that it was because of the West African gas pipeline and accident there.
That is what I was coming to.
And then we moved on. The crisis didn't go away. Then we said, oh, it is because one of the thermal plants and had a problem. And then we were told that it is because one of the plants in our Takoradi has been shut down for repairs. The problems continue, and now we're being warned that there is water shortage in respect of our hydro dams. So at each point,
we're shifting.
There is a reason why
we don't seem to really know what the situation is.
The reality is that the framework for power delivery is weak. The policy environment is unclear. Plus, the difficulties of the pivot of our energy sector, making those who are supposed to invest in generation uncomfortable, have all contributed to.
We'll continue with this, and when I come back from a short break, I want us to look at the human resource capacity, because the blames are becoming unbecoming, like we normally say. We'll be right back.
The tourism industry in Ghana is reported to be the fourth highest foreign exchange earner on our GDP list. We will find out what the impact, the identification, development and promotion of tourist sites in the local vicinities where they are located. We also want to talk to the various chiefs and opinion leaders in these communities to assess whether tourism is making a positive or negative impact on the lives of the local people. This is Tourism TV, fact-finding program that seeks to investigate the existing and potential tourist sites. Join me, Ralph Aite, this and every Friday on this wonderful expedition to find out what tourism is all about in Ghana.
Africa is becoming more populous and richer. It has experienced unprecedented and uninterrupted economic growth for the past 3 decades. But if African countries are to become economically successful, their governments will have to implement adequate policies which contribute to the expansion of the private sector, job creation, and an increase in the productivity levels. Corruption must be dealt with in Africa. Unemployment, mainly among the youth, is another challenge facing African leaders. These and many more issues that hinders our growth will be discussed on the banner and provide the why, how, and what to accelerate the continent's dream of economic freedom. Watch on the banner every Saturday. It's going to be hot, heated, but focused. Africa's future success will depend on stability, sound policies, and solid institutions. Don't miss this. Welcome back. Still with Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng, MP for Obuasi West. Sir, blame. This is about pipe, it's about equipment, it's about natural source, water. Why don't we anticipate? Are we not, because this is not the first time? And perhaps it has taken kind of turn to a certain higher degree because of the immense demand for power, looking at the population growth, industrial growth, and all that, and therefore demand. Why haven't we been able to determine or perhaps anticipate, like you said, the averages are there? Is it because we've not taken that area seriously, or we lack as a nation the requisite human resource to really manage the energy sector, which is so critical to our economic health?
I think Ghana has an impressive set of skills and expertise to be able to deal with those problems. I have no doubt at all that we have the expertise. The problem has been discipline. The discipline to do the things we are required to do. The discipline to spend our money in the right places.
All right.
It's like a father in the house that definitely wants to see his children in school. No father really wants to have a child that doesn't get a good preparation for life.
All right.
But the father likes to drink beer and likes to go after the women and likes to do all the wrong things. And so in the end, he's left with very little for the children's school fees. And you ask, why? Is it that the father is wicked? It's not that the father is wicked as such, but it's because of the lack of discipline. Okay. Oh, you use batteries.
Like we're saying, so seriously, we just had an experience of power outage. That's one of those things characteristic of the nation, but we can still do something little. So you are sure we have the human resource, but then it's because of poor prioritization of what we should use our scarce resource in terms of finance, money, for. Is this not a critical issue in terms of revenue mobilization? Because many organizations may have not, companies may have not anticipated this, or perhaps acquisition of generator, or because electrical power from electricity company of Ghana or Kweku or wherever it is seems to be cheapest for industry. Is it not going to culminate in a total disaster for our industry?
It is, and I think as a country, resources would always be limited. Now, when you have those limited resources, you put them in the most critical areas of your needs. Until we get that discipline and put the money into the most sensitive and strategic areas of the economy, we're going to continue having problems. I've already cited SUBA, the GDI, where expenditures and all this misappropriation of funds would reflect in inadequate allocation of resources into energy generation, and then you have this kind of difficulty. The consequences are beginning to show. Tema, the once industrial hub of this country, is a pale shadow of its former self. Many companies in Tema are distressed, are laying off workers. In some cases, they have collapsed completely. And we can cite many examples. The erratic power supply, the cost of industrial power. You know, power to industry is priced differently from power to the general consumer.
Okay.
The price of industrial power, the deterioration of the value of our currency is such a big problem for our industries, especially those of them who have to import raw material in order to produce. So the external atmosphere is hostile, and that situation is not improved, is not made any better by the fact that domestic interest rates are very high, which ties in with government's over expenditure. Government overspends, it needs money, it goes to the money market to borrow, and government at the moment is giving 23%, 24% for treasury bills, and they are pushing the private sector, driving up the cost of borrowing. So our businesses cannot borrow at reasonable interest rates. All these have contributed to the distresses of our companies, and now we're beginning to see the effect directly. The laying of workers, corporate profit is going down, and until something radical is done by government in this regard, I foresee this trend continuing, and a time is going to come, unemployment will be so high that it could create social problems for all of us.
What would the radical thing be, if you suggest?
Some of them have to do with government cutting its expenditure, and I think I've spoken extensively to that.
Yeah.
It's one of the most critical things government has to do.
Okay.
2, government has to exercise courage and do some things that we have all agreed ought to be done. For instance, there are companies on government payroll, some government institutions whose workers draw their salaries from the consolidated fund when they are generating enough internally generated funds to take care of themselves. In Ho, that I was corrected the other time. In whole last year, certain companies were cited, certain institutions, state-owned enterprises were cited as institutions that could do without government subvention.
Okay.
Government must exercise the courage and wean these companies off.
Okay.
If government did that, then our wage bill that government has been lamenting about would reduce.
Energy. What do we do?
Energy, we should pay attention to ECG. Government should be more disciplined in the use of its own energy.
Okay.
Government, more importantly, has to be clear in its strategies in the long term.
Okay.
Because we know on the demand side, we know that 12%, between 10 and 12% per annum increase. Government must list all the interventions that are supposed to provide power on the supply side.
Okay.
Government must list them. And let's all ask the question, would these interventions deliver power to respond to the growing demand?
All right.
Government ought to be doing those things so that we can all contribute to government strategies.
On this note, Honorable, thank you very much for honoring our interview. I believe we need more time, but I'll create a platform for the other discussions, detailed discussions. And I hope that you also have the courage to at least give us a clue and not just put everything perhaps waiting for your turn of the national, responsibility. I think we need all hands on deck.
I agree with you. And there are no special things to do. They are the basic things we need to do are the things I have indicated. I don't think anybody has any special ideas going forward. If government will have the discipline and do these things,
the right thing at the right time,
I'm sure we would overcome our difficulties.
Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you too.
Still on the banner, we'll be right back. Africa is becoming more populous and richer. It has experienced unprecedented and uninterrupted economic growth for the past 3 decades. But if African countries are to become economically successful, their governments will have to implement adequate policies which contribute to the expansion of the private sector, job creation, and an increase in the productivity levels. Corruption must be dealt with in Africa. Unemployment, mainly among the youth, is another challenge facing African leaders. These and many more issues that hinders our growth will be discussed on the banner and provide the why, how, and what to accelerate the continent's dream of economic freedom. Watch on the banner every Saturday. It's going to be hot, heated, but focused. Africa's future success will depend on stability, sound policies, and solid institutions. Don't miss this.
Ghana's economy is experiencing difficulties that we have never known in the past. Of course, it's been a developing economy, so you would expect some difficulties. But if you look at several areas of the economy and national finances, you easily see that we are experiencing new difficulties, and I would mention a few. For the first time in the history of our economy, statutory transfers have not just delayed, they are just not there to be paid. For instance, the law says when you collect the National Health Insurance levy within a month, and I think it's the same for the GET fund, you must put the money in the various funds. That is to say, if you collect the National Health Insurance levy, for instance, you should put the money in the National Health Insurance Fund. Now, what is happening is that government has collected the money, the levies, all right, but somehow government cannot account for the money. To put it in another way, government is unable to put it in the designated funds, because it has used the money for something else.
Africa is becoming more populous and richer. It has experienced unprecedented and uninterrupted economic growth for the past 3 decades. But if African countries are to become economically successful, their governments will have to implement adequate policies which contribute to the expansion of the private sector, job creation, and an increase in the productivity levels. Corruption must be dealt with in Africa. Unemployment, mainly among the youth, is another challenge facing African leaders. These and many more issues that hinders our growth will be discussed on the banner and provide the why, how, and what to accelerate the continent's dream of economic freedom. Watch on the banner every Saturday. It's going to be hot, heated, but focused. Africa's future success will depend on stability, sound policies, and solid institutions. Don't miss this. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the On the Banner. On the Banner is proudly sponsored by Gold Coast Securities. Gold Coast Fund Management is a reputable fund management that has won 2 awards as the best financial advisory company 2011-2012. It is the only investment bank that has branches all over Ghana. You should invest with Gold Coast Fund Management for a good return. Call them on 050-129.
Now, the District Assembly Common Fund, for instance, is a statutory transfer. Okay. When government has collected our revenue, the law says 7.5% of that should go into the District Assembly Common Fund. We are in the middle of 2014. Government has not been able to transfer the monies, 7.5% of the monies it collected.
Are you suggesting that monies have been misused, or is it a matter of priority? Perhaps there are more begging areas, and therefore, like any business person would do, or any responsible parent would do, where the call is most urgent, sometimes you must pay heed, and therefore monies have been utilized in such sectors, not merely letting it look so political that monies have been collected, perhaps have not been paid.
You see, those who made the laws knew that government has other responsibilities. So you collect money, they say retain 92.5% for all the things you're talking about. Send 7.5% into the District Assembly Common Fund. Government is unable to do that until recently, when we had the 3rd quarter of 2013 District Assembly Common Fund released. We were in arrears for almost a year. Now, if you use 92.5% for your purposes as central government,
puts government on its toes, giving suggestions here and there with some positive criticism, that depends on your opinion out there anyway. The recent of it all is about his opinion on the economy, and specifically lately the energy crisis. He's made a few comments, and this afternoon I want to find out his views about what he makes of the economy as somebody in finance, and also on the finance committee of the Parliament of Ghana, right? Am I right?
You're right.
I hope I did well with the introduction.
Oh, you did.
Designation
Fantastic.
accomplished. There's something I must add. Are you a chief
fine.
of Bush? You're paying me something that I need to also put in there. There's a platform.
BDMP is sufficient.
Oh,
It's
beautiful,
sufficient
beautiful. How comfortable will you be when I call you Kweku?
You can, especially when you are in my house, you can call me.
Ghanaians don't seem to. We're trying to encourage people listening and enjoying talk. Sometimes it becomes so technical. So for us at BTA, we will try to simplify issues as much as possible, reduce the technical language, so that anybody, a first timer, will just enjoy and go along with the program with all the hearty discussions that we have. Once again, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So good to see you. You've been very passionate about some issues about the economy. I wouldn't want to put words in your mouth by going through a kind of Q&A. As a parliamentarian and typically a Ghanaian, what do you make of the economy, briefly, current economy?
I think in summary, and it is out there for all who are observing, that
4893, again, 050-1294-893. First National Savings and Loans, the People's Bank, First National Savings and Loans Bank, has branches across the country. Coconut Grove Hotel is also supporting this program. You can always have the opportunity to send your messages or comments via our WhatsApp number 05062907121. I'll pick it up again, 05062907121. My name is Ekshalom Yagono, and always on Saturdays between the hours of 3 and 5 on the banner is right within your homes, where you play a serious role by commenting, suggesting, but through our WhatsApp number. You're welcome once again on board, and do well to remind a friend out there that this is a specific platform to show up the economy of Ghana. With me for this afternoon's program is Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng. He served as the spokesperson on finance, am I right, sir? During the Kweku administration, and is now an MP. Honorable, you're welcome. I tried to send a congratulatory message, but unfortunately I lost my phones.
No, but I felt it anyway.
Wherever you were.
You wanted to
yes,
congratulate.
we had some interaction and all that previously. But it's been very vibrant of late, and I'm happy for that, showing the amount of experience he gathered while in office, trying to at least